Today I will be presenting the overview of Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, and this is my first time, so I seek your blessings, and I will commit mistakes, so I request you to please correct me so that it can help in my understanding. So we'll begin with the Mangalacharan prayers. Am I audible? We can sing together. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So we will begin with chapter 6, which is Dhyan Yoga. Now the word Dhyan is meditation and yoga is to link with Supreme. So Dhyan Yoga is linking with the Supreme Lord by the way of meditation. Now Krishna up until now has mentioned Karma Yoga in chapter 3 and 5 and Jnana Yoga in chapter 2 and a little bit in chapter 4, but he will present Jnana Yoga in chapter 13 onwards. So Dhyan, this is where he presents Dhyan Yoga. Dhyan Yoga is another way to think about it is it is a method of attaining spiritual perfection. So now teacher can change. So let us talk about what is spiritual perfection. So what is spiritual perfection? Anybody? How do we attain spiritual perfection? Yes, Prabhu.
Well, Bhakti Yoga is service to God. And accepting our position as parts and parcels of God and serving God.
Yes, definitely. And what I was also coming to was that the spiritual perfection is attained in 3 ways. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvat jnanam advayam brahmeti parmatmeti bhagwan iti shabdite. So spiritual perfection is attained as Brahman, which is this, the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. It is attained as Paramatma, which is the all-pervading super soul. And then it is attained as the Bhagwan, which is the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna himself. Now, there are 2 methods of attaining spiritual perfection. One is the indirect method, and that is the yoga ladder system that we talk about. Why is it called indirect method? Indirect because it attains to the partial realizations of the spiritual perfection. What are the partial realizations? Brahman realization and Paramatma realization. But what is the complete realization? It is the Bhagwan realization. And that can only be attained by Bhakti Yoga, which is the direct pathway. So direct pathway is like the escalator. One who is on the direct pathway, even he is on the lowest step of the escalator, he will ultimately reach to the top. Now, whereas on the indirect pathway, one has to come to the escalator, even after he reaches the top. So that is the difference. So let's look at the yoga ladder system. The lowest is the Karma Kandi. Now, we talk about Karma Kandi as a materialist, and I used to be one, and I think I am still. So Karma Kandi is a person who carries out activities but not connected to scriptures, not following any rules and regulations, and whole purpose is for attaining sense gratification. So that's a Karma Kandi. Higher above than that is Sakam Karma Yogi. What is Sakam Karma Yogi? I think Sanjeev Prabhu has mentioned this in detail, so we'll talk a little bit briefly. But this is Sakam Karma Yogi is Karma Yoga, where the individual is doing activities based on rules and regulations, but he is attached to his fruits. Then third is Nishkam Karma Yogi, that is a step higher, where the person is doing everything based on rules and regulations, but is not attached to the fruits of his results. Then comes Jnana Yoga, which is attaining spiritual perfection through transcendental knowledge. And then it is Dhyana Yoga, which we are going to talk about right now. Yes, Prisha, you can change. So let us see the overview of this chapter. This is a relatively short chapter. We'll see what is Ashtanga Yoga, who is qualified to practice it, what are the different parts of Ashtanga Yoga and how to practice it, what is the fate of a successful Ashtanga Yogi, and what is the fate of an unsuccessful Ashtanga Yogi. And lastly, what is Krishna's opinion about the topmost yogi. So, this chapter is easy. Easy is a mnemonic. E is who is our enemy and who is our friend. So the first 9 verses we are going to see, Krishna is going to talk about who is our enemy, who is our friend. Then the next 20 to 25 verses will talk about details of Ashtanga Yoga. Then we are going to talk about success and failure in Ashtanga Yoga, and this might apply to other yoga practices as well. And in the last 2 or 3 verses, Krishna is going to talk about who is the topmost yogi. Prisha, could you change? Okay, so let us start with Ashtanga Yoga and who is qualified to practice it. Now, as we saw that Ashtanga Yoga, Ashta means 8, right? And Ang means parts. So 8-parted yoga, and yoga we saw linking with the Supreme. So it is an 8-fold yoga system. The means is to control the mind and the senses. And the method is by bodily exercises, by breathing techniques, and by meditation. So that is Ashtanga Yoga. And we'll see this in a little bit of detail. But Ashtanga Yoga needs a qualification. One has to be at that step of Nishkam Karma Yoga. And then he can move up the ladder to Ashtanga Yoga. So Nishkam Karma Yoga is the qualification. That is, one has to detach from the fruits of his actions. Now let's contrast this with Bhakti Yoga. What is the qualification needed for Bhakti Yoga, anyone? No qualification? Some qualification. What does Nectar of Devotion say? Yes, Prabhu, Shraddha. So a little bit of faith is needed. And we know from Rupa Goswami's definition of Bhakti Yoga, what is the definition, anybody? Anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karmadi anavritam, anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. So uttama bhakti is devoid of fruitive actions, devoid of, so that is anyabhilashita shunyam, devoid of karma and devoid of jnana. Jnana, what kind of jnana? Monistic philosophy jnana. Knowledge that is bringing you to Mayavad philosophy, it is devoid of all that. So bhakti only needs a little bit of faith, whereas an Ashtanga yogi has to come to Nishkam Karma Yoga. So we are going to contrast this with with Bhakti Yoga as we keep going. Prisha, change. So now this brings us to verse 6.1, and in my kids classes we used to call these good verses that we had to memorize as key verses. So if you all can recite, I will say and you can recite behind me. Anashrita karma phalam, karyam karma karotiya, sasanyasi cha yogi cha, na niragni na chakriya. So one who is unattached to the fruits of his work, who dutifully performs his prescribed works is a real sannyasi and a true yogi, not he who lights no fire nor performs his work. So who do we think, what kind of yogi is Krishna talking about here? Anybody?
Nishkam.
Yes, Prabhu, Nishkam Karma Yogi. Why is Krishna starting this chapter with Nishkam Karma Yoga? This is supposed to be Dhyan Yoga.
Because that is the qualification to
Yes,
Ashtanga
Prabhu,
Yoga.
thank you. So, yes, so actually Krishna is saying that a person who is a Nishkam Karma Yogi is a true sannyasi because he has renounced his fruits of his actions. He is doing this and that is how he is linking to the Supreme. So, he is a true yogi. And he recommends this above somebody who is prematurely giving up everything and trying to go in the forest and meditate. So that is why Krishna upfront recommends Nishkam Karma Yoga over premature Dhyan Yoga. Okay, please move on. And this will be more clear in 6.3. We can just read the translation. For one who is a neophyte in Ashtanga Yoga, work is said to be the means. So that is Nishkam Karma Yoga. And for one who is advanced, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Okay, please next. Okay. Can anybody? This is a little busy slide, I'm sorry, but I wanted to give the entire overview of Ashtanga Yoga in one slide. So Ashtanga Yoga has two levels. One is the beginning level, which is called Yoga Ruruksha. That is the beginning level. Now, and the advanced level is Yoga Rudha. So these are the two levels. Now it has 8 parts. The first 4 parts are in the Yoga Ruruksha, and these include Yam. So first is Yam. Yam means don'ts, what they are not supposed to practice. And that includes no violence, no lies, no stealing, no illicit relation, no possessiveness. The second is Niyams, what they are supposed to do. So they are supposed to practice austerity, purity, contentment, supposed to study the scriptures, contemplation on Supreme. Then the 2 other are bodily exercises, which is asana, and pratyahara, which is the breathing exercises. So let us contrast it again with Bhakti Yoga. We see that, yes, Prabhu?
It's not pratyahara, it's pranayama.
Oh, sorry, pranayama, yes, my mistake, not pranayama. Thank you, Prabhu. So let us contrast this with Bhakti Yoga. Do you think one has, in order to practice Bhakti Yoga from the beginning stage, one has to be practicing Yam and Niyam? One has to be practicing non-violence, no lies, no stealing? Or does it come naturally when one practices Bhakti Yoga?
Comes naturally.
Yes, Prabhu. So it is said that the only qualification of a devotee is that he surrendered to Krishna. Rest all are secondary characteristics. They will automatically come. They may not be present in a devotee right now and you may not be able to appreciate it, but they will eventually come. So those are called secondary characteristics. But in Ashtanga Yoga, these have to be practiced and not, it's not like they can come later on. So let's look at the advanced level, which is the Yoga Rudha. And in that it starts with Pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Then fixing the mind on Lord's form, that is called Dhyana. Dharana. Then comes Dhyana, which is intensified meditation on the Lord. And then finally Samadhi, which is the final stage, which is complete absorption on the Lord. So what is required for an Ashtanga yogi to move from the beginning stage to the advanced stage? 2 things are required: mind control and detachment. Detachment from the senses and mind control. So now Krishna is going to spend some time talking about mind control. Yes. So here we are going to talk about the E of the mnemonic easy. So in verse 6.5 it is said, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Then verse 6.6 says, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of the friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So we see that who is our best friend? It is the controlled mind. Who is our worst enemy?
Uncontrolled.
Uncontrolled. Okay, so who controls the mind? What is meant by controlled mind?
Intelligence controls the mind.
Yes. See, Prabhu, you already know. You don't need me to tell all this. Okay, so let us look into how does one lose control of the mind. So we have read this in chapter 2, verses 2.62 and 63. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसा संगास्ते सुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामा कामा क्रोधात् विजायते. So a wandering mind will do what? He will start contemplating on the sense objects, and then attachment will develop. From attachment, lust. From lust, anger. And then the next 2.63 says, Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti vibhramat, smriti bhramshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. So from anger what happens? Delusion. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. Then the intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, we lose control of our mind and we fall down. Now, so the intelligence is connected to what? The mind contemplating on sense objects. Even if the mind contemplates of one wandering sense object, we lose our intelligence. It is compared to like a boat in the ocean, which is just swept away by a strong wind. So that is how a strong sense can just sweep away our mind. So now comes how to befriend the mind. That answer is also in Bhagavad Gita. We can do both approaches. One is a bottom-up approach and the other is a top-down approach. So bottom-up approach is in the hierarchy of mind, body, senses. What comes below mind? Anybody? Senses. Right. So we have to utilize our senses in experiencing a higher taste. So Bhagavad Gita 2, in chapter 2 it says, Vishya vinivartante niraharasya dehina raso varjam raso api asya param drishtva nivartate. When you dovetail your senses to a higher taste, then automatically the mind gets attached to the higher taste as well. Then comes, so this is the bottom up. Now top down. So that we said intelligence. So how is intelligence acquired? It is acquired by reading scriptures, by knowledge, and by giving service to the Guru. So how do you render service to the Guru? In chapter 4.34 it says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshina. So if you humbly surrender to a Guru and ask questions and render service to him, then you will get the right intelligence. Now what kind of intelligence is needed? We need one-pointed intelligence and not multi-directional, multitasking intelligence. So that is Vyavasatmika Buddhi Eke Ha Gurunandana Bahu Shakha Hi Anantasya Buddhayo Vyavasahina. So not Bahu Shakha, we need Vyavasatmika Buddhi, one-pointed intelligence. So that is how Bhagavad Gita suggests to befriend the mind. Now let us go to what are the results of conquering the mind. So one who conquers the mind advances to the higher level of Ashtanga Yoga, which is the Yoga Rudhas stage. Such a yogi can exclusively practice Ashtanga Yoga and give up his prescribed duty. So he can give up the Nishkam Karma Yoga at that point. And he fixes his mind on the Paramatma within. That is the goal, that they have to attain the Paramatma realization. And such a yogi will treat everyone and everything with equal vision. So the example given for everything is they will treat the stone, pebbles and gold all equally. And then even higher is they will treat everyone equally. That is enemy, friends and neutrals. All of them they will treat equally. So now from 6.10 to 6.32, Krishna explains the details about how to practice Ashtanga Yoga. And this part is a little confusing because Krishna will take us in circles. So that is why I wanted to present that first he'll tell us the sadhana, what are the practices. Then he'll tell us the siddhi, what do you attain by that. Then again he'll come back to the practices. Then again he'll come back to the siddhi. So he'll take us in a circle. So we'll go along with him. So for the first four, he talks about the sadhana, how to practice Ashtanga Yoga. So Krishna will talk about where, how and what. Where to practice Ashtanga Yoga? So one has to practice Ashtanga Yoga in a secluded, sacred place. Let's contrast this with Bhakti Yoga. Where can we practice Bhakti Yoga? Anywhere. Okay. How to practice it? You have to sit on kusha grass. You have to put deer skin on the top. Seat should neither be too high nor too low. Posture should be erect, and you have to stare at the tip of the nose. Why deer skin is to be put?
So that insect and all doesn't come.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so what needs to be practiced? So we saw that the first 4 things have to be practiced: yam, niyam, asana, and pranayam. And then in the advanced stage, the yogi should withdraw the senses from the sense objects and fix the mind on the super soul within. Then, after doing that, that yogi will get the siddhi. And what is the siddhi? So Krishna says, thus practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. So the siddhi is attainment of the kingdom of God. Then again Krishna talks about sadhana, a little bit more of what is to be done. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So this is true for all the yogas. We have to have a regulated life in terms of eating, sleeping and recreation. Then again he talks about the siddhi in the next 2-3 verses, that such a person will achieve the final stage of Ashtanga Yoga, which is Samadhi, where the mind is completely purified and one can see the self distinct from the soul, or distinct from the body, and he can experience spiritual bliss. That person will never be shaken even in the greatest difficulty, and that is compared to a lamp in a windless place. So, what is the fate of a successful yogi? When the person has attained samadhi, what does that person actually achieve? So, Krishna says in 6.29 that a true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. So, he is seeing equal vision in everything. And based what happens with this equal vision, then that Krishna will say in 6.30 what he attains. So again, this is a key verse, we can recite it together. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mai pashyati, tasyaham na pranashyami, sa cha me na pranashyati. So, translation is, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So, that is the result of equal vision and having Paramatma within, that he will never be disconnected with Paramatma. That is the epitome of Ashtanga Yoga. So, having heard all about Ashtanga Yoga, now Arjuna breaks his silence and he says, Krishna, this yoga is impractical and it is unendurable. So why does he say it is impractical? Where is Arjuna standing listening to Bhagavad Gita? He's standing on the battlefield. How is he supposed to see Yudhishthir and Dhritarashtra's sons all with equal vision? He cannot fight if he sees like that. So this is impractical for him. Even if he uses intelligence and tries to maintain equal vision, it will not last for the entire battle. So this is impractical. And then secondly, Arjuna says that Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Mind is restless, obstinate, turbulent and strong. In fact, it is easier to control the wind than controlling the mind. So now let us see who is talking like this. And Sanjeev Prabhu had said about Arjuna. So Arjuna is one who is the greatest warrior, who can strike the moving fish in the moving water just by seeing the reflection in the water. If Arjuna's mind is fickle, then what to talk about our minds which have such short attention span. So actually Arjuna is doing a favor to all of us by saying that this is impractical for us and it is unendurable. So Krishna acknowledges that yes, whatever you're saying is correct, but then he says that you have to control the mind still with suitable practice and detachment. So there is this word suitable. Krishna doesn't say, I just told you this practice, you follow this practice and control your mind. No, he says suitable practice, which he will talk about in chapter 7. And without the control of mind, self-realization is not possible. And that is true for all the yogas. So now Arjuna asks, again he's asking for us that, oh Krishna, what is the destination of such an unsuccessful practitioner whose mind is not controlled? Then he will lose the best of both worlds. He will not be of spiritual world, he will not be of material world. And he compares this to a raven cloud. Raven cloud is a cloud, a small piece of cloud that is broken from the bigger chunk of cloud, and then he just loses his identity. So he compares it with that. And to that, Krishna reassures him. And he has reassured us again in verse 2.41, where he had said, Neha vikrama nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swa alpa api asya dharmasya trayato mahate bhaya. That is, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. And somebody who is on the spiritual journey he's protected from the worst kind of fear. And what is the worst kind of fear? That is death. So fear of death. So now Krishna talks about that the unsuccessful practitioners, there is no loss or diminution. But what is the fate of them? So it depends on what level of practice they are. If they fall down early in their practice, then such practitioners will go to heavenly planets. So they will enjoy there for thousands of years, and then they will come back to earthly planets, because heavenly planets are not eternal, so they have to come back. And when they come back, they take birth in pious or prosperous families. So why does Krishna is so merciful that he sends them to heavenly planets? What is the reason?
Because they want to enjoy.
Yes, Prabhu. Because the most common reason of their fall down is they had unfulfilled material desires. So Krishna lets them fulfill it, do what they want to, and then take up their spiritual journey. Now, in contrast, someone who fell down after an advanced practice, just like we saw Bharat Maharaj, he fell down at the stage of Bhava Bhakti. That person takes birth in the family of yogis and transcendentalists. Or actually we should say devotees. And when they take birth there, even if they are not seeking spiritual practice, they will automatically get it. So that is the advantage. They'll get a head start. But that birth is very rare. So now we are coming towards the end, and Krishna will talk about the hierarchy of the ladder system that we saw initially. So he says, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, which is, ascetic means renunciant. So yogi is greater than the ascetic, he's greater than the empiricist, which is the jnani, and he's greater than the fruitive worker, which is the karmi. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. And then, in the last verse, Krishna talks about who is the topmost yogi. And again, this is a key verse, so we'll recite it together. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mata. So, and of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. This is my opinion. So, which yogi is Krishna talking about?
Bhakti Yoga.
Yes, so he is giving us the prelude of Bhakti Yoga that he's going to talk in the next 5 or 6 chapters. So, let's sum it up. It is easy. So, we saw who is our worst enemy, it is our uncontrolled mind, and who is our best friend, it is the controlled mind. And we saw why do we lose control of our mind, because our mind gets attached to the sense object, and from there the downward cascade starts. And then how do we control the mind? It can be the bottom-up approach by controlling the senses, or the top-down approach by the intelligence. Then we saw about the Ashtanga Yoga, the various levels and the practices, but we saw that it is impractical and unendurable, especially in this age of Kali Yuga. Then we saw what is the fate of a successful practitioner as well as unsuccessful practitioner. And then Krishna's reassurance to us that there is no loss in this pathway. And then we saw who is the topmost yogi, which is the Bhakti Yogi. That comes to the end of chapter 6.
Very good.
Questions? Are you feeling questions?
Yeah, I can try.
So to begin with, you had mentioned that, look, please forgive me, I'm not really in that space, I'm also practicing karma yogi and so on and so forth, right? That's how you began. And I was thinking that, well, I'm also like that.
Mm.
But then again, I'm thinking like, well, am I then a bhakti yogi or not? So what are we? like, I, I have material, very much, and not ashamed to admit it, material desires, and like, not at all trying to share my fruits of labor with anybody. Forget about Krishna, not even with, my friends or anybody else. So what, like, where are you?
Prabhu, you know more than me, but
I have no idea.
my understanding is maybe we are karma mishra bhaktas. So we have some amount of karma mishra in us, and but that is okay. We have taken the escalator path, and eventually, one good thing about bhakti yoga, I feel, is the beginning stage and the advanced stage practice the same things. The 9 devotional things that we have to practice. It is not that the beginners have to practice something else and the advanced people have to practice something else. So eventually in that process we will give away the unwanted things. It automatically sheds out. That's the beauty, I feel, of bhakti yoga, as opposed to trying to artificially stop something or control. And I think that is the most common reason why Ashtanga yogis fall down, because they have these desires that have been suppressed, and then they come out when there is a spark of sense gratification somewhere. So it is okay, Prabhu. I think if we are not able to give up, we always say, okay, we have at least our definition of bhakti yogi is one who surrendered to Krishna. So have we internally surrendered to Krishna is the real question, whether are we who we are, is what I feel.
If what you explained here, yogi Sangha system that you practice,
Yeah.
bhakti yoga, if that is the way it is, better than the other one, why should people go in that one?
Why should people go in Ashtanga yoga? Yeah, so I think, Prabhu, my understanding is now very few people actually practice Ashtanga yoga. The modern day Ashtanga yoga or Hatha yoga is just limited to mind and body exercises. Spiritual well-being is nowhere there. They never come to the advanced level. They are just limited to the bodily exercises and pranayama at the best. But yeah, I think in India maybe this practice is still on, and why they practice, I'm not sure exactly why or do they come, but I know this, that eventually they have to come to the platform of bhakti yoga in order to attain the complete realization, like we talked about. But Krishna is merciful that you can take any path you want, at least take something, and then he will bring you to the final path where you have to. That's my understanding.
Mataji, can I?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Mataji.
Okay, I was just like Prabhu's question
Yeah.
to the answer. I was doing it last week, so I heard about from some Prabhu's lectures.
Yeah.
He said the Ashtanga yoga is impossible in this age for sure, because like I heard that it was like 84 million species of life we go through, right? And there are 85 million postures to attain perfection in Ashtanga yoga for the bodily aspect, for the and then the other 4 are for the your subtle body, going into breathing and pranayama. So it's impossible. But Krishna did say this. He said so that we can. There is a formula he gave, but he didn't prescribe it to Arjun even then.
Right.
So this is impossible in Kali Yuga, where we only live for 80, 90 years. So it's impossible because the Ashtanga yoga, the last end is to the person who is observing, like in Bhakti yoga, when we reach the position where we can see Krishna in every soul, right? That same thing is available also in Ashtanga yoga. So there is another path. But Krishna says that is difficult. But I'm just saying that there is another way. But don't take that way.
Correct. Yeah.
So that is whole
He
process.
says, yeah, if you want to take
The
that way,
easy way
fine,
is
take
Bhakti
it.
yoga.
But yeah, I will give you a better pathway down
Yes,
the
Bhakti
lane.
yoga
Yeah.
is take time before.
Right. Yes, Prabhu, you were saying something. Yeah.
Just to literally, if you please allow me, just to literally Prabhu this question, why do people do Ashtanga yogas when there is Bhakti yoga? So, as Vishaka Mataji also said, that there are so many ways. So the way the Ashtanga yogas do it is to do the Ashtanga yogas in the proper way. Definitely it's too hard to do it. But when you do Ashtanga yogas and if you get perfection in it, it's when you control your mind completely, and when you control it, and just how, when Bhishma Pitama left his body, he had a will that whenever he wanted to leave his body, he had, he could live it. Same thing with Ashtanga yogis. If you do it right, you have that power that you can then control your mind, and with that thing you can live your body, obtaining that thing. But that is only going to the higher planetary system, not going to Golok and Vrindavan and all that stuff. So it's limited up to certain lokas. So that's what they do it. So with all the other Gyan Yoga and other yoga, this karmi, they can only go to certain level, but to go to the highest level, the easiest best way is to Bhakti Yoga. So I was just trying to.
Yes, yes, well, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any limited benefit for bhakti yogis to also do a little bit of Ashtanga yoga?
Prabhu wants to ask.
No. Very good question. And
Yeah.
in fact, that's why I'm just saying it's a very great
Is
question.
there any benefit? So, one way to think about it is, Prabhupada did not recommend Ashtanga Yoga, saying that you also do this. And from what I have read and my understanding is, it is not a part of Bhakti Yoga. The 9 devotional limbs does not talk about bodily exercises, pranayam either. We talked about the definition of pure bhakti, that does not include Ashtanga Yoga. But can we practice it for our own body? I think if we consider our body as a temple for Krishna and we want to practice it in that regard, then yes. So like Yukta Vairagya. You use your body for the service of Krishna, and for that if you are trying to practice but what is your priority? If your priority changes to attain siddhis, then that detours you. If your priority is service to Krishna, then you are focused in the right direction. I think that's what the problem is.
Ashtanga Yoga, Mataji, like as you said, it's difficult in this Yoga, Now people only do pranayama and asana, the posture and the pranayama,
Yeah.
body posture and breathing exercise. They don't do below 4, above 4, they just forget it, And doing all the 4 is very difficult. So Prabhupada said, like you said, Bhakti Yoga is the easiest path because you can just follow 9 process of devotional service and then
Yes.
you can
Yes,
focus.
and actually there says you can follow just 1 out of the 9. You don't even have to follow all the 9. Thank you everybody for giving me the chance.
Hari Bol.